If you were looking to buy a new bike today, in comparison to say 10 years ago, it would be quickly obvious that bikes have gotten bigger in key dimensions over the last decade. I mean, Pinkbike didn't make the Grim Donut to be the bike of the future with a massive reach and wheelbase without good reason. But what's driven this? Is it good? Have bikes really gotten bigger? And what does it mean for people on the fringes that either barely get onto the size guides or maybe they're too tall and have outgrown them? In comparison to bikes of the past, reach values in particular have mostly expanded. And that's okay for people that sit between a medium and a large frame because they can choose what suits them best. We've seen some brands drop the traditional sizing altogether to encourage people to go off dimensions, such as reach, instead of just assuming that they'll ride a large frame because that's what the label on their t-shirt size says. As for me, I'm only just getting onto the scale as it is with my size small. Sometimes it feels like I'm not given the same choices, and I get dragged along for the ride, and I either have to size up for something that's too big with all the bells and whistles, or stick with a size small that's not fully thought out. In today's video, I want to explore the broad topic of bike sizing, but not from another 5'10" rider who has all the choices in the world. Instead, I want to think about those, such as myself, that are smaller in stature, as well as those that have issues with fit, if only because they're very tall. Hopefully, this will shed some light from our experiences of what to look for in a bike should you be of similar height. Now to begin, I'm 5'4". So what is it that I really want, even require of my dream enduro mountain bike? The bike I'd ride on most occasions. A bike I can happily pedal for hours around the local trails or on a backcountry adventure. A bike I can take into the bike park for a few laps here and there. Even though my bike may be smaller, that doesn't mean I'm gonna be going slower. So I still want a bike that is stable with a wheelbase in the range of 1200 millimeters long. I want a relatively slack head tube angle that will allow me to ride the steeps with less worry about going over the bars, somewhere in the 64-degree range. Since swapping to a full 29er in 2017, I now seek out at minimum a 29-inch front wheel to roll smoother through the chunky stuff. Sometimes, if you're searching for a small enduro or trail bike, you might find that some brands only offer them with smaller wheels. Now, you could argue that my center of gravity is a bit lower and I don't need that rollover ability of the 29-inch front wheel. But for myself, I have found that the bigger wheel up front is of real benefit. Again, it's not like I'm riding different, smoother trails just because I'm shorter, and unlike theme park rides, you don't have to be a certain height to qualify to ride the most technical trails. When it comes to mixed wheels, that's just rider preference for me, much like it is for any other rider. However, when we're talking about long travel bikes, clearance can be a bit of an issue. Now, for the rear wheel, I actually don't mind too much. Could be a 29er, could be a mullet, which I have found easier to maneuver around tight corners. Because I tend to slog up dirt roads instead of winding, technical climbing trails, I prefer a steeper seat tube angle to make them a bit less draining, something in the 78-degree range. I think a lot of my riding embodies the winch up, bomb down style of enduro. I typically like a reach value of around 425 to 430 millimeters, and when combined with my chosen seat tube angle, gives an effective top tube, so the difference between my contact points of around 550 millimeters. With those numbers in mind, according to most of the size charts I referenced online, I sit right in the middle of a size small. Now, once you're armed with the numbers that you want, getting your bike right isn't so simple. For instance, insertion depth, or how far the seat post sits into the frame, is hard to come by once you factor in various suspension layouts. This means that getting a dropper post that has anything but the most modest amount of travel can be hard. Then you might run into the issue of not being able to fit a water bottle at all into your frame, let alone a large one. You might even say, when it comes to taller people, they have the best options they've ever had, with longer dropper posts available and some models that go up to double extra large sizing. Small stature aside, surely I'm not the only one experiencing these compromises when it comes to having the most amount of fun and enjoyment while out mountain biking. I mean, there are specialized riders and racers out there who require much more precision and a perfect fit when it comes to performing certain tasks. I've actually reached out to a couple of them. This is what they had to say. Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're a busy guy. Can you just start out by letting the audience know how tall are you actually, and what size bike have you been riding lately?
2 meters, 6'7", and I'm riding various XL bicycles. My downhill bikes that I've been racing the past few years are just under 500 in terms of reach. And I would definitely go bigger on the downhill race bikes because I prefer bigger reach and chainstay numbers for racing just for more stability.
What other compromises in fit or maybe features of the overall bike have you had to make in the past or that you still do?
Like, I would say to make things fit for a bigger person, sometimes you have to kind of go out with what would normally be acceptable. Like, I've run like really big stems in the past, like, yeah, get a bit more reach. But the one I'm doing right now is I ride a smaller trail bike and e-bike because you can get bigger bike sizes in trail bikes and e-bikes than you can for downhill bikes quite often. So I run a XL instead of a double XL so that when I switch between bikes, they feel similar. So I could ride a bigger trail bike and I like a bigger trail bike, but I don't want my downhill bike to feel like a little kid's bike.
When you get a stock bike out of a bike box, what do you traditionally have to do to make the bike fit you better?
So if we go kind of standard, I'm gonna go trail bike rather than like a downhill, I would probably fit a bigger dropper as much as I can get because I found with the new steeper seat tube angles a lot of bikes have, which I really enjoy, you just need more drops. So like 240 is not enough anymore. So I would go bigger than that. And then it's just all the other classic things like taller bars, some spaces under the stem. I run fatter grips because I got bigger hands. I sometimes switch reach adjusters if the bike accepts them. Not many trail bikes do these days. And if there's any adjustments to make the bike bigger, say like longer chainstay adjustments, then I just slam them all the way back. As
taller riders are often heavier, are there any setup changes that you've had to make to keep your bike reliable, especially in terms of like suspension or, you know, what tires you're running?
I would say it's just initial product choices at the start. So like getting biggest rotors you can fit so that I'm not cooking the brakes all the time. Running the, like with the brand that I've been on recently was Shimano, I'd run the Ice Tech rotors so that they don't overheat as much. Never run enduro tires, even if I've got inserts in. A lot of people would go in inserts in enduro tires, but yeah, I would just munch through them. And then same for like wheels. Some people would be like, oh, we'll just go down like one level of rims so that it balances out the weight. It's like, no, downhill rims, downhill inserts, downhill tires. Yeah, I find I'm a smooth rider, but I can generate a lot of force when things maybe go slightly wrong and things break. So I like to go sturdy.
Ben had some really great points to make there, and from the opposite end of the spectrum as myself, as a 6'7" tall rider. I was quite surprised to hear how many parts he would actually change on a brand new bike out of the box in order for it to fit him better. Now I want some other shorter people opinions to add to this, so I'm gonna reach out to Jessie May, who's a Pinkbike tech editor, see what she's got to say. Jessie May, thank you so much for joining this conversation today on the struggles of bike sizing. And how tall are you exactly?
I'm 163 centimeters, which is 5'4", I do believe.
What size trail bike have you been riding?
I almost exclusively will ride a small trail bike.
What do you usually have to change or adapt so that you can truly test the bike to its best abilities?
The very first thing I do with any bike when I get it out of the box for testing is I cut the bars down to 740. I just run it completely open on the compression damping and completely open on the rebound damping. Which means that like if there is a performance benefit to be had from an even lighter rebound tune, I'm unaware because I'm already at the extreme end of the spectrum. What
are you looking for when you're searching out a new bike for Jessie May to go ride?
Some of the best bikes I've ridden have had a reach figure really closely matched to the chainstay length. I mean, a 64-degree head angle is I'm all about that.
What would you say is an unexpected problem that most people don't consider about bike fit for shorter people? I mean, the suspension thing for sure, but anything else come to mind?
I find it is a common misconception that shorter people would prefer a full 27.5 setup. Like, I get it, like having the smaller front wheel, you can sort of be a bit more precise with it, and it's kind of lighter to chuck around. But like at the end of the day, like we're all riding the same trails. They've all got the same size holes in them. So that rollover advantage of the 29-inch front wheels, like it applies to everyone, no matter like how tall you are, what size bike you're riding. Taller riders need steeper seat tube angles, and that's absolutely true to reduce that rearward bias, particularly for like steep climbing. But like that advantage definitely applies to shorter riders as well.
Right. So it seems that, like I anticipated, there are other riders out there struggling to find the perfect fit, just like me. Some may argue that mountain bikes are the best we've ever seen them, with more variety in riding characteristics and features than before. While that's true, it doesn't mean I wouldn't love to see more of that performance, choice, and features available for more riders. Ben gave some great tips there on achieving the best setup when you're taller, and Jessie May for when you're shorter. So I thought I'd give you a bit of advice from my own experiences on how I choose a bike, and some setup tips as well. Number 1, don't trust t-shirt sizing. Just because it says small on the down tube doesn't mean it's going to work. Now, some brands have taken reach values to extreme places, which is fine if you have the option between frame sizes, but for shorter people, it can usually mean less options. For instance, if it's a size small with a reach of 460 millimeters or an effective top tube around 590 millimeters, I would contend that it's not really a true size small, but rather the smallest bike that brand makes. Number 2, tall riders have long legs, which raises their chest and torso. Subsequently, even though their arms are long, plenty of tall riders use a riser bar that helps that front end to be more in range. I might not have the same problem. A flatter handlebar cut to size is a great way of keeping the controls within reach and the front wheel tracking. Number 3, enjoy the freedoms that we get. Some people are always feeling the need for thicker tires, heavier wheels, and bigger forks. Smaller riders are often lighter, so don't feel the need to carry around all the heaviest and burliest parts. For instance, I don't need downhill tires on my enduro machine. I could get away with running something a little bit lighter and easier for climbing. Number 4, shorter stack heights mean that you'll essentially waste less of the valuable space, as you've already got a shorter seat tube. This is going to make a big difference when it comes to descending. Now, if you're going out looking for a new bike, make sure to ask what the insertion depth is on the frame and what is the maximum length dropper you can run. Number 5, think about standover height. While maybe not something everyone needs to worry about, a high standover height can really undermine confidence, especially if you're just starting out. For me personally, I would not want to run a standover height that is taller than 735 millimeters. Now, I suppose at the end of the day, we as riders could and should focus less on the size labels and more on the overall bike fit that we're after, while taking into consideration those pesky geometry charts. Fancy features aside, ride what feels good. And if you can, take opportunities to sit on the bikes of friends or head to a bike demo show where you can try different sizes within the same model, brand, or genre. By arming ourselves with as much knowledge as possible, we then have the power to make good decisions and understand what it is that we really need and also want from our bikes. Cheers for watching today's video and learning alongside me about the struggles we short and tall people still face in 2024. Let me know in the comments below, what are some factors that you look out for when you're picking a new bike frame, and how do you settle on size? And if you don't already, please subscribe to the channel.